What's up, guys? Ewing is finally giving us our first look at the Gold Lantern in DC's Absolute Universe. The wild part is, this story is set to connect the Absolute Universe better than anything we've seen before. Superman, Batman, Martian Manhunter. Everyone's story is being tied together here. And this all starts in issue number 5. This story takes us back to when Joe Mullen first became a Green Lantern after touching Abin Sur. At the same time, we see a very nervous Hal Jordan, who's different from how we usually know him. He's on edge, holding a gun, and when he sees Abin Sur, he quickly points it at him. Abin Sur warns Hal, saying Joe Mullen has power without understanding. She is anomaly. Hal asks what does that mean, and Abin Sur explains, anomalies cannot exist in the spectrum of light. She will be sought, hunted. Be with fear, Hal Jordan. The thing about Abin Sur's words is that they often seem reversed. Be with fear really means fear for your friend's safety. In panic, Hal shoots and kills Abin Sur. But before dying, Abin Sur grabs Hal and says, Judgment. Judgment, Hal Jordan. The Black Hand. That's how Hal first gained the Black Hand. His gun was changed into the weapon that infected him, giving him powers similar to a Green Lantern. This raised big questions. How does the Black Lantern Corps compare to the Red Lanterns? Hal himself asks the question, what did you do? But Abin Sur only says, judgment is no longer in progress. And how far out? How far out is the world that's coming? Fear the Black Hand, and fear the Black Star. Then he dies. The story jumps back to the present where Hal Jordan is fighting Joe Mullen, who now seems like a mix of the Black and Red Lanterns. The red side shows in her rage, since Red Lanterns represent anger. When Hal admits he killed Abin Sur, Joe completely loses it. Now any answers they could have gotten from Abin Sur are gone forever. Meanwhile, the city has suffered heavy losses. John Stewart was pulled into the Green Lantern and may know the weakness, yellow or gold, but he's gone. Guy Gardner seems to have been killed. Kyle Rayner is only briefly mentioned. Basically, Hal is alone with no one left to give him answers. And that's where Hal tries to justify, right? I thought he'd killed you, Joe. The cafe fell down around us. Todd was dead under the rubble. I saw a flash of green light and then you were gone. What could I think? That's why I pulled the trigger, and that's why all of this is happening. So, what happened to you, Joe? And she just says this and then immediately goes on the attack against Hal Jordan. And it's like the Green Lantern happened. Both of these characters are showing that they can't fully control themselves. Even though Joe looks calm on the outside, inside she's full of anger and confusion because she doesn't really understand what's happening. Hal Jordan, on the other hand, is much more direct with his emotions. And Joe says, it fell out of the sky and everything in me was screaming to get out before it hit. The next thing I know, I'm in the desert. No idea what direction I traveled in until I felt a pull like a compass needle towards you. And that's where Hal says no towards the Black Hand because it was getting stronger, and it was taking control and killing people because of her, because of you. So this thing, this power he has, is partially speaking through him. And he says, you brought the Green Lantern down. You destroyed Evergreen. You stole the power of the Abin Sur. You are anomaly, Sojourner Mullion. And that's where Joe starts to pick up on what's happening. And she asked the question, who's talking, Hal? Because you're not the one talking. Someone else is talking through you. Who is talking? And that's where he just continues on without even answering. It was you in the ring. Take off the ring, Sojourner Mullion. Take off the ring. And that's where she's just kind of like, what? Because now it's this heightened state of confusion. She doesn't know who's really speaking through Hal. And Hal might not even be in control anymore. They keep mentioning taking off the ring, but she can't tell if that would help her survive or just make her weaker so they can kill her. There's no way for her to know for sure. So she decides to take the risk, thinking it's better to have power than none at all in a situation like this. So she just says, make me. And she blasts this thing with as much power as she possibly can and then races off. And while Hal Jordan follows her as best he can, at that point you switch over to Hector Hammond, who's kind of watching everything unfold. In the Absolute Universe, Hector Hammond is very different from the one we know in the main DC universe. Physically, he's not a giant head on a tiny body, but he's still just as evil and dangerous. He's also extremely rich, and soon we learn that he knows exactly who Ra's al Ghul is in the Absolute Superman universe. During the fight between Sojourner and Hal Jordan, they're suddenly pulled back toward the Green Lantern and dragged inside. Waiting for them is Golden John Stewart, the Gold Lantern. He greets them by saying, "Sojourner Mulline, Hal Jordan, be without fear." That's when he begins explaining what's really going on, finally giving some answers. The big question raised is, how far out is the world that's coming? From there, the story shifts to Agent Cameron Chase. For those who don't know, in the main DC universe, Chase works in a supernatural investigation unit that handles paranormal and metahuman cases, often tied to Amanda Waller. Waller oversaw metahuman affairs like Superman, Batman, The Flash, Green Lantern, Swamp Thing, and Constantine. Chase was just one part of that larger system. In the Absolute Universe, things are similar but slightly different. Cameron Chase gets called into her boss's office, and here we learn that she's actually the connection between Batman, Superman, and the other heroes. That's why this meeting matters so much, even though at first they're just talking about the cases she's working on. She says, "You pulled me off Nevada and California. That leaves what? Oregon. And what's in Oregon?" She says, "Oregon squared away by Tuesday. Monday lunch." And she says, "What do I do the rest of the week? Count ceiling tiles? I told you I'm not going to transfer east." And of course her boss is like, "You absolutely can't smoke in here." And so she's like, "Whatever." And she asks, "Is this about Evergreen?" And he says, "It's not entirely about Evergreen." And she says, "So it is about Evergreen. Just say it, right?" And he says, "The Evergreen situation does potentially cover the relevant states." And so then she asks California, the entire state of California. And he says it's close enough to the border that presumably it would involve California. And that's why he kind of continues on. "You know why this is? You know why I cannot put you on Evergreen? You can't even go near it. Every regulation says that, and I'm doing you a favor here, right? I'm helping you, and you see that, right? Like, tell me that you see my side." And so she asks, "So did Hector Hammond buy you a beach house or what?" And then she just put on administrative leave. And so we're going to circle back around to her here in a minute because, again, she's going to become important. But that's when you get this explanation from John Stewart, because John says all of this is OWA. Don't panic. Don't be afraid. I'm going to work to translate these concepts as best I can. Try to understand. And he says, "The Abin Sur is the judge of worlds. A community is a world in miniature. So a testing ground was chosen and contained, and judgment began. On the ground, evaluation is only the first stage. The second stage is transport into the Green Lantern and throughout it into the presence of Oa." And he says, "But Owens don't think like we do. They do not have the perspective we do. People were afraid. People died, but not everyone." And that's when you see Guy Gardner. And so that's where Sojourner is just kind of like, "Okay, you're alive. Like everyone here in the town is alive. Like we all thought they were dead." And the response of John, "We're all alive. Joe, let yourself know it. Let yourself understand it. We're all together here in the place of understanding, and we are all without fear." And that's the crazy thing, because in turn, how Jordan says, "Fear is all I can feel. It's the hand. The hand does not like to be here." And Guy Gardner chimes in, "There are 4 levels of light. Cord is the lowest, then Rao, then Sur, then Aur. Chaotic action, restraint from action, correct action, total understanding, enlightenment." Now here's something important. What is Rao? If you know Superman's story, you know Rao is the god of the Kryptonians. Some theories suggest that long ago the Kryptonians were visited by Abin Sur, and they turned his ideas of discipline and control into a kind of religion. Over time, that belief may have been twisted. Remember, in the Absolute Universe, Krypton's ruling class planned to save only themselves and leave the common people to die when the planet exploded. But here's the thing. We only know about Krypton's end through Superman's memories, and he was basically a teenager when it happened. So we're really seeing it through a child's eyes, which means we don't fully know what truly happened, or if his version is accurate. These are the big unanswered questions which connect back to what Guy Gardner is saying. The responses to Sojourner Mullen, "That does not make me want to panic any less, John. Is Guy okay in there? Like, what is this place? What's the Green Lantern? What is Owa? What was Abin Sur judging us for?" And the response of John, The Abin means the adept, the controller, the guardian. The Abin Sur was a guardian at the green level of light. The task of an Abin Sur is to select initiates into light for what's coming. Guy showed restraint, so he was judged as deserving of the red flame. And that's where we learn that red flame is restraint. It's not rage. And that's where Hal asked the question, what about me? Did I deserve this? Talking in my head, telling me every dark thought I have is right. Why would he do that to me? What good is that? I try so hard to control it, to stop it. And Guy Gardner responds, every flame can be controlled, but you must have understanding to command the flame. Total understanding. Control of the flame without understanding is Tomar. Anomaly. And that's where Sojourner Mullen is just like, now I know there's something wrong with you guys, something wrong in your heads. Acting like this is just some big lesson to learn instead of a bomb strapped to our friend. A bomb that keeps going off. And for what? Hal's right. Why did Abin Sur do it? And the response of John that I don't know and we cannot ask because he's dead. Chaotic action. All I can tell you is what I've seen and what I've learned, what's coming for us. And he says, I've only scratched the surface, but I was chosen because I sought knowledge, Joe. Selected for the gold flame Ain Or. Or is the highest level chord the lowest. But see, that's the Owen perspective. There are others that look in the opposite direction, who see Oa as incorrect. They take power from the dark, power without restraint. The Abin chord, the weaponers, the black stars. How far out is the world that's coming, Joe? How far out is the world of chaos? How far out is the Black Star world? How far out is Mogo? It's pretty wild because in the main DC universe, Mogo, as most of you know, is actually a Green Lantern planet. But here, Mogo is home to people who choose to embrace darkness and chaotic power, which is crazy to think about. I wouldn't call it as simple as good versus evil, but the fact that he isn't part of a peacekeeping force is shocking. When Hal Jordan sees this, he says, that's it, right? That's the thing in my head. It's the size of a planet and it's in my head. And that's where Guy says, enemies fear the face of steel. And Sojourner Mullen is just like, screw this. She's like, I'm the Tomar or whatever, I'm the anomaly. All Abin Sur's power, none of his knowledge. I don't know what the rules are. Not like you, John. But if I don't know the rules, then I'll have to stick to them. And if Abin Sur put this crap into you, Hal, then I'm betting I can get it out. Give me your hand. And that's where Hal's just like, no. It wants to kill you, so I don't want you to die. And she just says, right. It's the darkness. It wants to eat the light. But you heard what John said. It's all one thing. We're all one thing. You're just at the lowest level. And that's all. You're not some entity out there separate from all of this. And so she says, somebody's got to help you up. Give me your hand. And when Hal Jordan does that, she removes all that black impurity from him. Like there is no more black hand at that point. And Hal just goes back to seemingly his normal self. And so she's like, let's get out of here. They quickly jump out of the Green Lantern, and when they do, black slime starts pouring out. The lantern then vanishes, but not before Hector Hammond tells his men to either chase after Sojourner Mullen or study what's happening. This is where everything starts connecting to the bigger absolute universe. But as Hammond watches, he's told they can't keep up with Sojourner Mullen. She's flying too fast and already out of range. And so he says, okay. Right? Like everyone shut up and let me think. He's like, no one's got it, right? Not us, but not Ra's al Ghul, right? We've got what it left us, the black ooze and all that data. So at least it's a win. We have at least something. This shows us something we already suspected, that villains like Ra's al Ghul, Hector Hammond, and maybe even the Absolute Joker are basically in a race for metahuman powers. It's the same thing we see in Absolute Flash. Metahumans aren't seen as heroes or protectors anymore, but as weapons to collect and control. Meanwhile, out on the moon where the Green Lantern had teleported, John Stewart is just sitting there, asking an important question. How far out is the world that's coming? And he says, closer every day. And then he just tells Sojourner Mullen, come back soon. At this point, the focus shifts back to Cameron, and here's the cool part. She calls her partner, who turns out to be Simon Baz. By now, we know Kyle Rayner has been mentioned. Guy Gardner is learning the red flame power of restraint. John Stewart is active, and Hal Jordan is around too. The only Earth Green Lantern missing is Jessica Cruz, and it feels like she'll show up soon. What we learn here is that Cameron and Simon are actually partners, and this is where things start to connect, because she asks an important question. I'm your partner. Who are you even working Evergreen with, and don't tell me they put Pemberton on it. You know, he says, oh, it's not Pemberton? You know the rules, Cam. You're emotionally involved. And that's when you find out that Cameron Chase's ex-wife is Jahnoy Mulleen. That's why her superior wouldn't send her out there, because she can't be impartial. She can't be devoid and separate of everything that's going on. And what's crazy about this is Cameron doesn't know this Jahnoy Mulleen there. She says she wasn't there anyway, right? She told me that she never wanted to go back unless that was a lie too. And that's where Simon's like, see, emotionally involved. You can't do it. And so he tells her, I mean, you could always take the transfer. You know, career-wise, it would be a phenomenal idea. And so that's where she's like, Gateway's here, Evergreen's here, it's all here. What's out east, the Gotham thing, some guy? She's like, I'm Coast City, born and raised. I'm not leaving this town until I find out what's going on. It's pretty wild because now we're starting to see the absolute universe actually coming together. Instead of just having Batman here, Superman there, or Wonder Woman somewhere else. It's a slow build, but they've chosen the best writers for it. Dennis Camp, Al Ewing, Jason Aaron. These are the perfect people to slowly connect the worlds and tell stories that bring everything together. And here's where it gets interesting. While Cameron is talking to Simon, there's a knock at her door, and she starts going off about Jahnoy Mulleen. Like, I thought that I was done with her, right? She's a locked box of secrets and I was done. And she says, God, Simon, how many times can Jahnoy Mulleen screw up my life only for her to find out the person at the door is Jahnoy Mulleen? With Hal Jordan? All right, guys, we're going to wrap this up. Absolute Green Lantern is amazing, and the Absolute Universe as a whole is just incredible. Honestly, when you give Al Ewing a pen, he'll write one of the best comics you'll ever read. He's just that good. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.